My name is Mark Harris. I am the Andreas Idrios Professor of Science and Religion at the University of Oxford, and I also direct the Ramsey Centre for Science and Religion, which is one of the bodies that has organised this conference on the Oxford Oath. AI has become a huge topic of interest in the science and religion area, really over the last, 5 to 10 years, largely with the advent of LLMs, large language models, which has really inspired people to think about what exactly are LLMs doing to human beings, to what degree are they emulating human beings, and particularly, to what degree are they actually almost becoming thinking beings such that we might need to start talking about them like we do human beings, using terms like personhood and accrediting with feelings, creativity, intelligence, and so on. And what this has done, this series of questions has done, has forced us to go back to our thinking about where does our understanding of what a human being comes from. Much of that comes from religious terms, and for Christian theologians like myself, we think about phrases like being made in the image of God. What does that mean when you're talking to a large language model? I initially trained as a physicist and spent decades of my life working particularly in quantum physics and in magnetism in some of the national research labs here in the UK and in universities. Then in my 30s, I began to get really interested in theology, partly through my wife, who was seeking ordination in the Church of England. I found that the kinds of questions she was being asked and asking herself resonated with me. And so before I knew it, I was doing a degree in theology myself and looking to be ordained in the Church of England. And that led me, or rather enabled me to recognize quest that I'd had throughout the time I'd been working in physics for trying to understand what really is real behind what we think we know and what we're seeking and questing. And that eventually led me into this field called science and religion, which I represent now. And here I am teaching and researching in the subject, particularly as a physicist, but also with theological interests as well. The wider world tends to assume that science and religion don't have much to say to each other. Perhaps they're in conflict, but those of us who work in the area have a different take on it, and we can see many ways in which they both have lots to say to each other. There is certainly conflict, but also a lot of dialogue that can be very positive as well. About a year and a half ago, I and a few other colleagues started thinking about ways in which we could stamp our own sort of Oxford thoughts on the AI and theology and religion world. And that is when we came up with the notion of, is it meaningful to talk about formulating a kind of an oath or a commitment that all or many AI engineers and developers could take? And that took me into the journey of discovering in much more depth about what exactly is AI, what are large language models, and what could an oath do in order to help clarify what we're doing with this technology now. What I found in my thinking over the last 2 days, this has surprised me actually, because I thought I would be able to confront questions about AI, how it's used in practice, where we think we're going with it. I thought I would be able to do that in a kind of disinterested theological way. I've actually found that, thanks to my training as a theologian, it comes in at every level, and I want to think about, at every level of asking, what is AI? What are large language models doing, and what are we seeking to do with them? I bring in theology at every possible angle here, thinking about here we are, human beings creating something which potentially has a force to change the human world and the wider physical world as well. There's a great deal of responsibility upon us. We need to think about integrity, our security, the dignity of all of our other human beings and creatures. And theology has an awful lot to say about all of those things, and has done for thousands of years. So this is why I automatically, I find, myself turning to theology.